You are listening to the Therefore I Geek podcast, episode 81. Hi, everybody, and welcome to Therefore I Geek. I'm Andrew.
I'm Tracy.
I'm Jad Umbra. This is Radiolab from WBC Chicago. Or wait, no, now I'm mixing up Radiolab and This American Life. I get those two blended all the time.
It's easy to do. They sound a lot alike.
Yeah, it's the same groggily voiced NPR reporters.
Yep.
I feel like they go to training to talk like an NPR, like on-air personality. They go to gargly voice training. Like when you do your story, you got to talk in your lower register, and in the back of the throat, you got to vibrate a little bit. It makes it sound really serious and scary and sad.
But it's not done at like a college kind of classroom. It's in like an underground bunker, and like
They fill it with mustard gas briefly just to affect the vocal cords.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's really a dark place.
You guys have seen that SNL skit Sweaty Balls, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's my favorite
Basically.
spoof of NPR.
Do you remember when like Haagen-Dazs or Baskin-Robbins or whoever it was tried to come out with an ice cream called Sweaty Balls?
Oh, after that, yeah, I do.
Yeah, like some years after that, they came up with Sweaty Balls ice cream, and then some lady who doesn't believe in fun, like started a letter writing campaign to get it pulled from shelves. It made it as far as shelves. It made it as far as like the supermarkets, and then someone was like, I can't believe they put Sweaty Balls out there. This is so terrible. Da, 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 da.
All those employees had a heyday when they canceled it and pulled them from shelves, though. They took it all home.
Pile of Sweaty Balls.
Yeah, so today we're kind of just wing a little bit. We're going to do kind of an extended version of the What Are You Into? But before we do so,
we don't plan anything.
We plan on occasion, and then we change the plan. That's what
The day of.
That's what we're really good at. It actually is changing the plan. Masters of it.
This happens so often.
Before we get into that, though, we want to talk briefly Star Trek Discovery. The premiere date got pushed 5 months from January to May.
Yeah, that's a long time.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what this means for them,
especially for a TV show.
Yeah,
starting in May, not always a good idea because that's right before all of the people start leaving for summer vacation and stuff.
Admittedly, though, they're doing something different with this anyways. Like it's a TV show, but they're broadcasting the series premiere, and then I think the rest of it is all online.
Yes, that's what I've heard.
At least that's the way I've understood what they put out. So
is it dropping weekly or is it just going to be in a lump?
No, it's
Netflix?
Suppose it's going to drop weekly.
Okay, that's interesting.
I'm curious. I mean, that's also kind of an interesting how is this going to work for them? But we were talking the other day. I mean, networks are they're taking risks. They're trying different things just to capture that little bit more of an audience.
Yeah, this just worries me a little bit. I'm worried, at least on the positive end, you can say, okay, well, they're trying to get this right. They want it ready for fans. They want to get the special effects right. They want to hammer out the scripts better. They maybe want to do reshoots because I'm sure they've filmed most of it already.
Probably.
On the other hand, I'm sitting there going, they don't know what to do with this show. They have no idea what to do with this show.
Right.
That's what I'm really worried is like they're not sure what they're doing. They're not sure what their demographics are anymore. They're not sure how to reach the hardcore fan base anymore. They're not sure if it's big enough to keep the show. Like, that's where I'm worried, is that this show is already in trouble before it launches.
Yeah, I'm kind of in a similar boat. I think the fact that they're pushing it back, at least to me, says that they're really concerned about direction and what they're doing, and they're trying to buy themselves, an extra 4.5 months or so.
Here's a question for you guys, since we just did the Star Trek episode and you're both big fans. How does the new Star Trek show appeal to hardcore fans? How do they get you? How do they pull you in?
Go back to science fiction roots.
Yeah, it's so funny because we talked about science fiction roots on the last podcast a little bit. And then like a day later, I think Andrew and I were on syncopated like pats because he was like, well, the old Star Treks used sci-fi writers can you name one today that you'd like to see right? And I was thinking the same thing. And the only name I can come up with is David Brin, the guy who writes the Uplift series. He's the only modern science fiction writer that I know, that I can name, is David Brin. I don't know if he'd be good at Star Trek. I have no idea. He's the only one I can name.
Right, and the only one I could think of is John Scalzi, who I think
he would be great.
I don't know if he'd be good. I think he'd really enjoy it because of writing Red Shirts. I don't know that he would actually be good.
Yeah, Red Shirts felt a lot more like Galaxy Quest than actual Star Trek.
Oh no! It's a hardcore parody of the original series.
Yeah, I think Andrew and I are in agreement, at least on this topic, is that if they want to really capture fans, they got to go back to their roots, and they got to do what at least in my opinion, hardcore science fiction / moral conundrums. That's what made Star Trek interesting to me. Yeah. I don't know if that's going to work. And then throw in a couple explosions. Just a few.
Well, how do they market it to you? How do they get you to watch it? I mean, obviously the name.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think
that's just Star Trek. Okay.
Right. No, I think it being Star Trek gets the people in the door. And then I think, honestly, I think it's the buzz around those first couple episodes that it's either gonna make or break the series.
I totally agree. That's super true. Oh,
there are so many Star Trek fans out there that they'll tune into that first episode. I guarantee that.
Yes.
But it's a question.
That's the case with most of the Star Trek series. You'll see series premieres have huge numbers.
Right. And if you can sell them on that episode, maybe the next couple of episodes, you're gold.
Yeah. So if we can change topics just a little bit.
Yeah.
Here's a good example. The Netflix series Stranger Things, right?
Yes.
That's a series that drove itself on word of mouth, right? It had great quality writing to go along with it that everyone was interested in. So if you want, in at least my opinion, if you want Star Trek to survive, it's got to get to the level of strain, especially on a downloadable platform or streaming platform, right? Now that's not on network TV. You have to make people want to go look it up, go through the mesh of products that are out there, the Amazon Primes, the Hulus, the Netflixes, and pick Star Trek. And for that to happen, the quality has to be really high. You're going to have Stranger Things quality in terms of sci-fi writing to get people to want to watch this.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Yeah.
For it to be a hit, for it to survive more than how many episodes do they order? 22? Like the standard 22?
I don't know, actually.
I wouldn't be surprised if they dipped back down to 13. Or not back down, but dipped down to 13. Maybe even 8.
I want to say I've heard a number, but I can't remember what it was. Just
I didn't hear a number, so I wouldn't hold you to it. I wouldn't.
But it says 13 episodes.
Ah, see? Okay. Yeah. So that's probably it, is they're going with that model. So they're I think gonna need a quality. Have either of you watched Stranger Things?
I have started it. I have not gotten very far.
Man, I would highly suggest it. It's
I've
good quality writing.
I've been limiting my Star Trek or my TV intake significantly just so I can get some other stuff done.
Oh, I hear that.
My hard thing is that if I come in the door after work and I turn on the TV, it's not going to shut off. So if I want to read or I want to get anything done, I have to just not touch that button for a little while at least.
Yeah.
Right.
All right. So, like I said, we're just kind of doing an extended version of what are you into? And Tracy, you seem to have the largest stack of stuff. So I think
Tracy decided to read an 800-page book in a week.
It was good times.
That would take you and I like a month.
A year.
Yeah.
Year.
Or if it's Moby Dick, never. Our entire college career and then some.
Actually, I found my old copy of Moby Dick and the New Jersey Transit train ticket that I use as a bookmark.
It's funny you say that. I have the Horus Heresy books for Warhammer 40K. The first 7 of those books, I used the receipt from the first book as a bookmark. But
it just transferred book to book to book.
Yeah, basically. And by the time I got to the last book I used it for, it was just a blank sheet because it's the thermal paper and it wears out after a while. So it's just a little blank white slip of paper.
Nice. Yeah, so I think I mentioned this on a previous podcast. I was watching a BBC show on Netflix. It's actually a mini-series. It's not a full regular television show. It's 7 episodes called Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. And I got, I think, 3 episodes in and suddenly realized it was based on a book. I think there was a blurb on Netflix that Neil Gaiman was referring to something. And I was like, oh, wait, if Neil Gaiman's talking about it, it's probably a book. So I went and looked it up. Sure enough, it was a book. So I ordered it from my very favorite place, which is thriftbooks.com. So nobody pays me to say this or anything, but Thrift Books is amazing because you usually can get almost anything on there for like $3.
They should start paying us.
For real, because I love this. I love Thrift Books. So if you pay more than $10, you get free shipping, but it's like the super slow media mail that takes like 2 weeks to get to your house. So I've always forgotten what I ordered by the time it gets there. And then I open this, and it's like a present to myself. It's awesome. So anyway, so I ordered this book and I gobbled it up. So this is sort of an alternate history, but I don't want anybody to think it's like Harry Turtledove or any of that crap. Sorry, Harry Turtledove, if you're listening.
No, it's
to
okay.
I've
read a number of his books, and my problem with Turtledove's books is they are super predictable.
Also super
because it's actual history.
No, but it's like he follows this. It's barely alternate history. Like, what was that Into Darkness series he wrote, which was basically World War II fought with dragons and unicorns and stuff. And if you know the basic overview of World War II, you knew how you could pick out who the nations were, and then what they're gonna do, and they're like, oh, okay, here's their version of the. It's like you just knew where everything was going. That's why I didn't finish that series because I didn't need to. And then what was it, but the aliens invading Earth during World War II, and that was...
He did... Well, his first one was the Civil War, but if the South won. That's where he started.
Guns of the South, right? Where South Africans give AK-47s to...
Yeah, I think it was Time Travelers or something that ends up being the Deus Ex Machina in that one. So this is not so heavy on history. This is set in during the reign of George III. I think it's 1809 to 1816 or so are the years. And it does reference the the big Napoleonic War and then his resurgence in Europe briefly until the Battle of Waterloo. And so
100 days.
Yeah.
That's what they call it, the 100 days.
Excellent. Yeah. So they do sort of reference Duke of Wellington, and one of the magicians sort of goes and interferes in this war, but the war ends the way that it did in history. So there's nothing particularly historical, but what I like about the things that really caught my attention is, number one, the wit is fantastic. It's very Jane Austen / Charles Dickens / any British sort of author of roughly that time period, but it also acts a little bit like an actual history. So there are these giant, I don't know if you guys can see this book that I'm showing you, but there's
hold it up for our listeners so they can see it.
Exactly. Well, that's kind of what I was hoping for, that they would be able to see it through my voice. But there are these gigantic footnotes at the bottom. So it'll actually fill in, much like reading a really well-written history. So the story flows really well. I will say she's probably takes about 300 more pages to tell this story than she absolutely needs. But because she has so much fun sort of filling in some of the extra folds, if you will, in the story, I actually like it. I don't mind that it's so much longer. But if you are somebody who looks at an 800-page novel and thinks, yeah, I'm never going to get through that, that probably this one isn't for you. But if you don't want to read it, but you still are curious about the story, I finished the BBC miniseries. It's 7 episodes. The episodes follow the book so closely. I mean, there are a few twists that you obviously have to take because that wasn't going to work for a visual medium. Twists in the story, but typically, for the most part, it followed. Even the conversations were often line by line directly from the book. So I've always liked the way that the BBC treats miniseries adaptations of books. Pride and Prejudice, they did a great job. Sense and Sensibility. They treat the author's original work as though it is sacred. So they spend a lot of time taking the actual material they're given and making it an adaptation, as opposed to a lot of American miniseries and series, TV series. It seems like, well, I know a good example of that is World War Z, where it seems as though the movie is a completely different story even than the book. So
yeah, they had production problems too. So like they reshot a lot of it. They changed the ending.
and some of the shots don't look all that great, even at the end. But anyway, so if you don't want to read the book, I would say this is one of those times when you can easily watch the miniseries and still get all of the good stuff, and it's not a problem at all. Then I also read The City and the Stars by Arthur C. Clarke, and this story is about, this is the author's own words, the story is about 25% lifted from a story he wrote in 1937. This book was, I believe, published in 1954, but I have misplaced my copy of it, and so I can't tell you the exact time. So he wrote the story and published it in 1937, and the more he thought of it for almost 20 years, he just kept feeling as though he didn't do his original story or story idea justice, so he was going to redo it. So he basically reset the story in the same place, but filled it in and rewrote it and borrowed about 25% from that original. That book, it's not very long. I think it's maybe like 120 pages or so, maybe a little bit longer than that.
Is that like officially novella stage? When is something going from novella to novel? Is there like page length?
I don't know. I can look it up and put it in the show notes or something like that. It's really borders on the edge of novella. And the third book that I have to talk about definitely is a novella. But
Telenovelas.
This book, telenovelas. Telenovela is a whole different thing, but they're so much fun to
watch. Good old Spanish soap operas.
This story is set in a futuristic time in which the Earth has been completely, basically wasted. And there's this tiny little city with all of humanity in it that is essentially not cloned, but they have, when they're done living, and they live for about 1,000 years, all of their memory, they go through all their memories, they pick what they want to keep, and then they trash all the rest. And then they store it in this crystal in the central memory banks of the city. And then a few hundred years later, when a new body is created, their memories are all uploaded into the new version. People have sex, but not to have kids, that kind of thing. And everybody is basically born fully formed.
It sounds like a pretty good world for dude.
Yeah, I was about to say, I'm signing up for this one.
Live for 1,000 years, sex, no worry about kids.
One of my favorite moments in the book is when they're discussing like reproductive, genitalia, and they've evolved past the point that men's, junk is in a hazardous position, so they can actually like suck it up into their bodies when it's not in use. And I was like,
it's the Society of Manginas. It's the Society of Manginas. Oh God, who wrote this? Anita Sarkeesian?
No. Although, she probably enjoys reading it. So basically, the main character, decides.
As well as I do, that woman doesn't enjoy anything.
She enjoys the moments she spends drawing on her eyebrows. Come on.
She enjoys.
She does an excellent job.
She enjoys being rageful.
Yeah, she really likes being upset about things. Anyways. So, of course, this is pretty predictable. The main character realizes that his destiny is somewhere beyond this one city, and sure enough, he goes and he finds other things. And he sort of spends so much of the build-up to the novel wanting to get out of his city and see what else is out on Earth, and he always keeps thinking about how he wants to go to space, and he's really sad that nobody goes to space anymore, and humanity used to be among the stars, and they've sort of retreated, and they've just disappeared into their one little city, and they don't do that anymore. And once he gets out of the city, he realizes that there is more on Earth beyond just the city. So I'm thinking, you can feel the story climax and then start to come down, and all of a sudden he decides he still does want to go to the stars after all. So he just makes a really hurried trip in like the last maybe 30 pages to go to outer space very briefly and then come back, and he's all done now. He just wanted to see it. So given that this guy is such a pillar of science fiction writing, I kind of expected a little bit more. It's worth reading because it's so quick, but if it were much longer, I would have just really gotten upset and set it down.
Well, for one, I don't necessarily know that you picked his best work.
Oh,
Yeah,
I know I
say.
didn't. Yeah, I tried to pick something a little more obscure.
And I mean,
But...
and when you talk about, those kinds of writers, Clark, Bradbury, Heinlein, Philip K. Dick, like
Ellison.
Right, they were prolific writers. So there's some really good stuff out there, and there's a lot of stuff that's really not that good.
Yeah.
Heinlein and Philip K. Dick especially.
I have heard that about them. I haven't read anything that's particularly terrible by them, but I'm sure that's coming. I guess with this one, I'm mostly disappointed that he said he spent 20 years thinking about it and wanted to give it another shot, and then it was still shitty.
That's always dangerous. Huxley did the same thing with Brave New World, is he went back and kind of... I don't think he rewrote it, but he definitely tried to spruce it up. And in the forward of the edition of Brave New World that I have, the forward is written by Christopher Hitchens, and he mentions it, and he's like, they don't let authors do that. Like once they're done, you can't let them go back because they'll just rewrite the same book over and over again.
Hello, George R. R. Martin.
Oh no, I was gonna say George Lucas.
Yeah. Also true.
Yeah, just don't let them do it.
I mean, that goes back. I mean, even further than that. I mean, Mary Shelley went back and changed Frankenstein.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
What did she change?
I don't
just
remember specifically.
Updated it or whatever?
I don't remember exactly what. I just remember my English teacher in college. Like, I remember we read the original version, and my English professor in college, not Rocco, was just like the whatever she changed just was total garbage.
Yeah, it's I don't know what it is. Like just don't do it.
It never goes well.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
Oh,
so
was that it? Was that it? Was just reading books?
I got one more.
One more?
Yes. The last one that I read was called The Third Man by Graham Greene. And Graham Greene, the reason I read that book is because I'm also still working on a book called The Art of Betrayal, which Andrew lent me like 3 years ago. And I'm slowly working my way through.
Yeah, I know. We are pushing 3 years.
Hold on a second. You blast through an 800-page book in a weekend, and Andrew's given you a book 3 years ago that you are still, quote, working on.
Okay, so now I feel a little bit defensive, and like I
Good,
need to
you're supposed to, because I was being offensive. That's the point. That means what I said got across.
No, it's been sitting on my shelf for like 2.5 years, and I finally picked it up about a month ago, and then I got partway in and realized that it was
worse. It has been in plain view.
I know.
For a fifth of a decade.
In my defense, for like a year of that, I was in college, so I was having to read other stuff that was mandated. So I had some excuse, but no, you're absolutely right. I need to finish it. So, but it did recommend to me. It was talking about Ian Fleming. And then in that same vein, it was talking about a couple other authors that had started out as MI5 operatives and then ended up going on to write spy novels. And one of those was Graham Greene. So Graham Greene wrote this book called The Third Man. What?
Fleming wasn't really an operative. He was like an ideas guy. He would come up with like, hey, we should send spies to go do this. And like they're like, that's gonna get everyone killed, and he's like, okay. It was
such a good old boys club. Like,
oh no, it definitely was.
Reading the actual book about it that's nonfiction, I'm going, holy crap! The fact that any of these guys lived and or the Earth is still standing is a miracle. They're both basically just like completely ridiculous. They sit around and drink whiskey and smoke cigars and then come up with ways to end the world.
Yeah, that was basically what Fleming did. He was the ideas guy. He would just now. What's funny is like some of his operations went through and were fairly successful.
Right.
But like if you listen to like all of his ideas, for every one idea they actually like went through, he had about 1,000 that they were like, what?
Yeah. Or I think there's a few of them where they like Fleming's like, yeah, let's do this, and they're like, you're out of your damn mind, and then they turn around like, all right, we're so gonna do this. We're just not gonna tell him because he's a douche.
Yeah. And then it's like, and then basically he went back to Bond. When he did Bond, he was like, all right, you know that idea that they didn't want to use? I'm making Bond do it.
Right.
Was basically it.
That sounds about right, actually.
This is how and why it totally would have worked.
In this make-believe world. No, it's awesome. So I read The Third Man. It's a lot less showy and flashy than Bond. And
Bond movie.
You said that. Well, a Bond movie, that's true.
Bond books are not really that showy. Well, at least Casino Royale is not showy and flashy.
Okay. I still have not read that, so I'll have to read it to compare now. The Third Man, I have not seen the movie with Orson Welles in it, but...
Which, by the way, just last year got a re-release in brand new 35 millimeter. They did it. They showed it in a run of theaters around the country last year. I saw it here where I'm living. Looks great. It just looks so clean.
Is it black and white? It's black and white, right?
Yeah, better be black and white.
It feels black and white. You're reading the book and you're like, this literally occurred in black and white. I think the world was black and white at that time. So it takes place in occupied Vienna when France, Britain, U.S., and Russia are all holding Vienna. And then there's a central zone that they take turns, like they take 24-hour shifts, sort of looking over. And it's very cold. It's very bleak. It's about a guy who writes westerns who has a school, like a boyhood friend that calls him up and says, "Hey man, I'm making a lot of money. You should come over. I'll help you out. I know you're always hard up for cash." So this guy goes over, discovers when he arrives that his friend is dead, and is like being buried that day. And then it just sort of goes through. He decides that he doesn't think that his friend died of natural causes, and the U.S. Chief of police or whatever over there, or no, I'm sorry, he's British, so it wouldn't be U.S. It was the British guy. He wouldn't believe him. He thinks that, this guy, Harry Lime, died of natural causes. And so the friend decides that he's going to go around and he's going to investigate the whole thing. And it just feels very, very typical of the time period. It's very bleak. Everyone seems to have such odd motivations. And the main character is kind of a nitwit. I mean, he stumbles on the truth, but not because he's smart or any of his ideas are any good. He just sort of bumbles around until he figures it out. So it's a tiny little novella. It's definitely worth it. And I think Penguin Classics publishes it along with The Fallen Idol, which is an even shorter story by Graham Greene. So I recommend that you pick that up, preferably from thrift books, because I think I paid less than $3 for it. So yeah, now I'm done.
Yeah, if you haven't seen the movie, I would really suggest it. It's quite good.
I definitely will check that out.
I feel like it made the top spot in the British Film Institute's best 100 British films.
It is British, right?
Yeah, I'm almost certain it is. And what's interesting is that Orson Welles is in both movies on the top of the BFI and AFI top 100 list. Citizen Kane is on top of AFI, and Third Man is on top of BFI.
It is, yeah. Third Man is on top of the BFI.
And we, Dude and I were chatting right before we started recording about Orson Welles playing Harry Lime in the movie, and that's just, I haven't seen the movie, but I know it's perfectly typical because that character in the book, as his information about him comes out, of course, as they're investigating the murder and they talk about him and stuff. It's just so him. Yes. He probably played him just like he plays himself in real life.
Yeah, it was basically, Orson Welles is basically just playing himself in most of his roles.
Good point.
That's really, with maybe the exception of, Touch of Evil. But yeah, it's basically him. Lady from Shanghai, he puts on a fake Irish accent, which is kind of priceless. If you haven't seen that one, watch that one. That one's great. Nice. All right, Andrew, your turn.
So I mentioned last week that I was reading a comic series called I binged one called Black Science. It's kind of an interesting series. So it's by Rick Remender and Matteo Scalera. It's put up by Image. In general, I've liked a lot of Remender's other work, Fury and stuff like that. His work on Uncanny X-Force was spectacular. This is interesting. It starts off like the first 10 or 15 issues. They're okay. They're not great. So basically, the general idea is you've got this character, Grant McKay, and he leads what they call the Anarchist League of Scientists, which is a stupid fucking name. It's dumb.
Anything that starts with anarchist,
generally,
is going to be kind of dumb.
Yeah. But basically, the idea is, he creates this thing called the Pillar that allows them to jump between dimensions, and just instead of jumping to here's where the Nazis won World War II. They jump into just fucking weird dimensions.
Like
Excellent.
Rick and Morty style dimensions.
Yeah.
We're just like really, really out there.
Really out there. Also just like really like, people just getting butchered all over the place. Like I think within the first 3 or 4 pages of the first issue, somebody gets just shot like through the face. Like it's
like in one cheekbone, out the other. They're fine. It's just the face. It's just right through.
Yeah, sure, we'll go with that.
It's like that Russian general from like the Napoleonic Wars. It went in the temple and then out his nose and missed his eye. That was.
No. I mean, one of the characters. It's not even a character. Like they basically don't even have a purpose other than getting their head blown off in the first like couple of pages.
Awesome.
Right.
Excellent.
There are definitely aspects of this book you would like, dude. I don't think in general you would like the whole book though.
Probably not, but I am definitely pro head explosions.
Yeah, I mean, just like, and they are certainly game to off characters. And like the weird part is because it's dimensional hopping, some of the characters have been killed and then replaced by other dimensional versions of themselves. and the
just
one
like Rick and Morty.
the one part I would say you'd really appreciate is that the character Grant McKay is a fuck up in every dimension. Like basically, so what happens is McKay's boss Kadir breaks the pillar controls, so they're just jumping at random.
Kind of like sliders.
Yeah, a little bit, but because they didn't realize it was gonna, it was gonna break. Like Grant brought his kids along and some other people from the lab, and so like part of the book is just Grant trying to keep his kids alive. And basically, at one point, like, Grant gets killed and is replaced by another version of himself. And basically, the other version says, in every dimension we've ever traveled to, you have failed to keep your kids alive. Like, you have just sucked at this.
That's so awesome. I like the sound of that.
Yeah, and then towards the end, like, towards the more recent issues, it just gets supremely weird. Like it's fun weird, like... They basically they fix the pillar, and then one of the people doesn't want to go back to their home dimension, so they smash the pillar again. Only this time it's right as they're about to jump, so it scatters all of them all over different dimensions.
Oh no!
And like
Watch Tracy, they're not real. It's okay. It'll be fine.
I know.
You spend 5 issues with Grant in this storyline called God's Head, where basically like. It's been like 3 years for him. He's completely forgotten almost everything because it turned out like he basically like forced himself, like he made himself forget. So he's got to travel on this like weird, I don't even know it's not even a planet, to basically go find this like Godhead is what they call it. It's just basically like himself, but in like a big like big giant head statue to like restore his memory. It's so fucking weird, but like
tell me he has to crawl up the nose to get inside.
He doesn't.
Because that's the only. Damn.
No,
it's the only way you're supposed to. If you've got a head, the only way I want you to get into the head is you have to go up the nose. That's stairs leading right up to the nose.
Yeah. Oh, that's good.
I'm pretty sure that's how you get in the Mount Rushmore heads, actually.
Yeah. But like I said, I mean, the book just gets super weird, and that's actually when it got like the most interesting. Where Grant's like, it's basically like, he gets all his memories back and everything, and then he's like, I'm gonna go save everyone else, and like 2 of the people he's found, one's dead, one's like, one killed their doppelganger and took their place, but basically he's still fucking up at light speed.
Good.
Like he still can't not screw up. Which is just.
Is it all the same writer on this one? Rick Remender does the whole thing.
It's all Rick Remender. I think they're on issue like 25. I've read up to I think 22 or 23. So
is all of his stuff this weird? I feel like no.
It's not weird. It tends to be kind of dark. Remender tends to be fairly depressive, like his personality. If you go and read Fear Agent, he was writing that during a particularly dark time in his life. And it goes some really sad, really unfortunate places, but it's all really good. And then the other thing I've been doing since last week's podcast is, while I've been doing the exercise bike because I'm fat and I need to exercise, is I've been watching old episodes of Star Trek. I went back to the original series. Dude and I both realized, we haven't watched the entire original series. So I basically started with the unaired pilot and have been working my way through. I'm like 3 or 4 episodes in. I mean, it's fun. Like, it's just really, it's goofy, it's stupid at times, it's a lot of fun. Yeah, in the first, aired episode, the man trap, 4 people die and not one of them are red shirts.
they haven't set the rules down yet. They don't know the rules yet.
Yeah, they haven't established the proper
the protocol for deaths.
Yeah. I mean, and it's definitely of its time. I was telling a message dude while I was watching one of them, and Kirk and McCoy are running around this planet, and they're trying to find someone, so they're calling out to them, and you can hear the yelling echoing off the soundstage walls. Like, it's really funny. I mean, even though to start, even early on though, that they are hitting some of those moral conundrums and the ideas of right and wrong, and I mean, the unaired pilot, the Cage, aside from lacking pretty much most of the cast, it's got some of the Star Trek elements there, but it's not fully formed, right? It's just not quite there. It feels a lot more like a lot of like the other, science fiction shows of its time, Lost in Space, that kind of stuff. Once you actually get to those, even to that first episode, the man trap, and then into the next episode 3 is Charlie X. Even once you get to that point, it's much more formed. It's much more what we think of Star Trek. And so it's interesting to see. I mean,
what causes such a jump like that, though?
Well, I think part of it is that you're right. They did the first pilot, and it didn't get picked up, but they liked the concept. So basically, they said, "Okay, what do you guys like about the concept?" Kept those elements, and then swapped out the elements that were less desirable.
Makes sense. And this is the one that was sponsored by Lucille Ball as well, right? Well, or the original, not Lucille Ball, but
no, Lucille Ball.
No,
okay.
Her.
Yeah, no. So Desilu, which is Lucille Ball's production company, was the production company for all 3 seasons of Star Trek.
Okay. Yeah.
And she was, like we mentioned last week, she was instrumental in getting the second pilot done. The one thing I did notice is there is some they pulled some elements from the unaired pilot, at least I feel like, and put it into the beginning of Star Trek Beyond. In that the whole part at the beginning where Kirk is just doing, it's basically the same thing over and over again, and he's just getting tired of it.
Yeah.
The doctor who's not McCoy has a similar conversation with Captain Pike in the beginning, where Pike's just getting really burned out. So,
well, I mean, at least we know that they're pulling from actual, source material instead of just making it up.
Well, I mean,
that's giving him way too much credit.
Yeah.
Keep in mind, the guy who did Star Trek Beyond is the same dude who did the Fast and Furious movies.
Right.
Good point.
I mean, it was at least written by Simon Pegg, though.
This is true.
Who is a giant nerd.
Right. Did I tell you that, I kind of snuck in and watched another half hour of Star Trek Beyond?
Yes,
did I mention that in the last show?
Did. Yeah.
Oh, my God. That movie is truly terrible. That movie is truly... You watch it again, you just go, what is this?
Yeah.
Stop! Just stop!
Well, yeah, we talked about it. It had a lot of potential. The concept was good. And it failed in a lot of various execution stages.
That's when I went to go see. My God, it's Jason Bourne. I haven't been.
How many times did you see that trailer? Out of curiosity, how many would you guess?
It had to have been 2 or 3 dozen. And then the ultimate letdown with that is in the Bourne film, they don't use that line.
Do they not?
They don't.
They don't.
Oh my God!
The line they use is, he whispers it. He's like, "Oh God, it's him," and it's like, "Really? Really? I've been waiting months to see this. I'm prepped. I'm ready. I'm like a diver at the end of an Olympic diving board, ready to go off, and then it's like falling and ripping your toenails out as you tumble down and just land on the
like
green water of Rio.
It's like one of those one of those really terrible divers that you see that they go to do the flip and just crack the back of their head on the diving platform.
Oh,
it's one of those. He's like,
Yeah,
oh no.
I haven't been to the movies in like 3 weeks because I haven't been able to generate interest in seeing anything. I do want to see Don't Breathe, but that's about it. I'll go see a bunch of stuff.
I still need to go see War Dogs, which I will see, but only because...
I want to see War Dogs too.
Yeah.
I'll tell you this much. I haven't been really reading much this last couple of weeks. What I did is I started gaming some more, and I went like straight up nostalgia. I got TIE Fighter off of Steam from like 1995. Now, this is a game, I was amazed how much I still remember.
How well does it actually physically play?
It plays really well. That's the thing. So this
What
is
are you playing it on? Your phone? Your computer?
I'm playing it on my laptop, and the problem is I think I've hit a problem because it's cutting out on a certain mission. I can't... every 5 minutes it stops playing and it just shuts down on me. So I don't know what's going on. You have to download it off Steam, and then they have like a patch to make the computer think it's Windows 95 so you can still play it. And I play it on a Xbox controller for Microsoft Xbox controller. What I haven't figured out is how to set the controller to commands that I want, because it just comes a certain way and you kind of have to relearn them. I wish I could set certain controls or certain settings on the controller. The thing is, as far as how it plays exactly like the old 90s flight simulators where you've got to adjust engine output, shield output, laser output, targeting. All the targeting systems are different. Like you could set nearest target that's targeting you, general targets, you could cycle through targets, you can follow your warhead into its target. So there's all these buttons on the keyboard, and it's super, super intense. And I had my buddy, he's a gamer over, and I was showing him this game, and he's like, this kind of flight simulator combat game does not exist anymore. Like,
No.
It just can't think of one. It's like, what would you need to bring it back? And I was like, really what you would need is you would need to make a TIE Fighter version of Mass Effect. Like, that's what you would need, is you would need the customizability of the ships. You would need kind of like to see more of the world and explore more of it than I think they do in this game. Because in this game, it's like you win a mission, you go to the next mission. You win a mission, you go to the next mission. Right? And then you have secondary missions that you can achieve in the game. But those secondary missions, if you achieve them, do not affect the outcome of the game. You just get like a little tattoo on your pilot to show that he's done this.
Gotcha.
So like that kind of stuff. Whereas like in a game like, let's say Mass Effect, when you do the little side missions or you do something a certain way, it changes the outcome of the game a little bit. Like that's what I think you would need to do is make those secondary missions, bonus missions, the secret missions.
That sounds amazing. But holy crap!
That was one of the greatest things about Mass Effect. You know, decisions you made in the first game came back as a benefit in the third. Like whether or not you let the Rachni live, the Rachni Queen, if you let her live, it came back as a benefit in the third game.
Well, I will say this though, I did not let her live, and you just kind of got a zombie Rachni Queen. So my one criticism of the game is it changes the details of the game, but it doesn't change the overall direction.
Oh, okay.
That was because I did not let her live, and it was like, oh, okay, didn't really change anything. But I would like to see them do that bring TIE Fighter back, so that the problem really is TIE Fighter was a game designed for PC back in a time when PC and console were two separate things.
Yeah, very much so.
Right? Very much so. Nowadays, games are designed with PC and console in mind. That they have to be both. Yeah. And TIE Fighter, with all the flight controls that were designed into the game, would not serve a console.
You don't have
game
enough buttons.
There's not enough buttons. Nope, there aren't enough buttons. So it'd have to be a pure PC game.
You think about it, right? You had TIE Fighter. You said 95.
Yeah, so there was 3 of them. There was X-Wing,
right?
TIE Fighter, X-Wing versus TIE Fighter and X-Wing Alliance. I don't know if the last two are in order, but
Right.
those were the primary 4 flight simulators from Star Wars in the 90s.
Right, and then in the early 2000s, you had Rogue Squadron.
For N64.
You're right, but that
Yes.
was in. I'm just looking it up real quick.
Yeah.
That was in '98, so that was 3 years later.
Right, it was a very different game.
Well, but what I'm saying is, you look at the level of, because conceptually that was a flight simulator as well, but it was. I mean, you look at how the advanced level of controls for TIE Fighter, all the different options that you just talked about, and then the very rudimentary level of control for a console game.
Yes.
And
yes.
And you're right. Like they've tried to blur the two. The two have kind of come together now, but you really don't have. They've all kind of gone more to that rudimentary.
Yeah,
control.
it's
I mean,
like
consoles and PCs. They've both gotten much better. So rudimentary is kind of a loose term, but instead of going to the more and more and more complex, they've gotten simpler.
Yeah, so like the graphics are, the graphics of TIE Fighter are basically cartoonish.
Right.
And the detail is very low. It's hard to see details on the bigger ships and stuff like that, especially because if you've got torpedoes on your your fighter, you can target particular components of an enemy ship. So you can literally like pick apart the laser cannons to make it stop shooting at you. And it's hard to see what it shows you a little box of what you're targeting, but like on the Rebel cruisers, you're like, I can't tell if that's on the top or the bottom. So you fire your missile and you realize you're shooting at it from the wrong direction. You hit the ship, but you don't hit the target you're aiming at. So I remember Rogue Squadron was the camera was set up behind.
Yeah, it was
the
third
ship.
person.
It was third person, so all you had to do was get the fire cursor on the crosshair on something and it blows up, whereas like you would never do that in TIE Fighter. You would just die. That's all that would happen. But that's been obsessing me lately. But I can't get past this certain mission, not because I'm losing, but because it's cutting out on me. It's just, I don't know what's going on there.
Have you tried to contact Steam about that? I mean, would they be able to help you?
I don't know. I'll think about it. But then there's I got Pokemon Leaf Green on my phone. So you can do that. I got a Game Boy Advanced emulator. I put it on my phone and then downloaded Pokemon Leaf Green, so I grew up on Red and Blue, and this is like kind of a more advanced version of Red and Blue. And because everyone's playing Pokemon Go, and I really don't care for Pokemon Go. I don't like the concept, but I liked the original concept of the Pokemon game. So I was like, I haven't played this in almost 15, 20 years. Let's try this. And I've already made my first major mistake. I used the Master Ball on already, not on YouTube, so we're not getting him. But it's been fun. It's been that game is a lot of fun. There's stuff I remember like it was yesterday, and then there's other stuff like I don't remember this at all. Is this new? Is this different? And I definitely like Leaf Green better because like you can run. You couldn't run in the original one. Mm-hmm. You can run in this one, and there's a few other things you can do. Trying to remember it, but it's in color. It looks nicer. The animation's better. Like I remember like Hydro Pump in the original game was just little jets of water going up around the Pokemon you targeted, and this time it's like an actual like beam of water getting shot at stuff. So it's cool. Did you guys ever play the original games?
Oh yeah, I had Pokemon Yellow. I was actually I was actually thinking
my brother had that one.
I went basically from a gray brick Game Boy to a fucking 3DS. I skipped everything in the middle.
My brother had a Game Boy Advance, so when it was still just the one screen, and so we played a bunch of games like that. We also had a thing in our neighborhood where we were pretty close as actually a couple of blocks because there were a lot of kids roughly the same age on the same 2 blocks. So we would actually trade games back and forth sometimes. So if you got, if you were bored with a game for a while, then you would just trade. But with the expectation that you would get your game back, which didn't always happen. There's a new Pokemon game coming out. It's called Pokemon Sun and Pokemon Moon. There's the 2 different versions.
Yeah, I've heard about it. I'm gonna be really stingy and just stick with the original 150 or 151 because like I don't like any of the new ones. I think they look ridiculous, and I just like playing the old one because the team I never got to build that I'm building now is like my dragon looking. So
Nice.
I've got Charizard, Gyarados, and Dragonite. Well, right now it's a Dragonair. I'm trying to get it to Dragonite. Those because you really can't fight with more than effectively fight with more than 4 or 5.
Yeah.
Because you have to use all those. One of them has to has the special abilities, and it's like surf and push boulders around and shit like that. So like really, so right now my lineup is a Charizard, a Gyarados, a Dragonair, a Raichu, and a Hypno. Those are the primary 5 that I'm using. And I gave Dragonair Thunder Shock, so I have an extra lightning attack. I have no plant. That's the only thing I'm missing is I have no plant. I'm not using a plant in this one. But I was just focusing on dragon types. Dragons and flying. Or at least they look like dragons. Because I don't think Gyarados is technically a dragon. It's like water and flying.
Yeah, no, that's an evolve from Magikarp, right?
Yeah, so I got like the old rod and immediately got Magikarp and started like doing the swap where you level them up.
Yep.
And then apparently like someone was telling me that in the later games you can attach like a thing to the Pokemon that'll allow it to share experience with another Pokemon so you don't have to do the swap. I'm like, really? Because it's not in this game. That doesn't exist. Not in this one.
Yeah.
That must be in one of those later ones. But it's been fun. It's been fun. What else? On the board game front, finally got. So I think I mentioned last time I tried D&D. Did I mention that in the last podcast?
And your character died.
Mm-hmm.
Died like. So I played my character like Dr. Orpheus because I was a necromancer from Venture Brothers because I binge watched Venture Brothers a couple weeks ago, and just like died immediately because our tank couldn't go up a flight of steps. Like going up a flight of steps, he rolled somehow he rolled a critical fail on going up a flight of steps.
I'm impressed she's making you roll for climbing a flight of stairs.
I forgot why that happened, but like Farouk wanted to do something and just fell, and then I went up to examine the armor, and the armor came alive and stabbed me in the gut. And I think it was like we didn't know. I don't even know how the turn sequences works on this, so I just died. And then like we had a bard. And the bard tried to mock the animated suit of armor, and we had to like it doesn't have feelings.
That's your first problem. You had a bard,
right? A tiefling bard, and then like the dwarf, the barbarian dwarf that we had, could not stand up. Like when he rolled to like get up and attack, he rolled another critical one and fell. And then after I got stabbed in the gut, I failed all of my like life-saving rolls or whatever it is. You have the death save, whatever it is. I failed all 3 of them in a row. And then he tried to get up, and he rolled a critical one again for his attack, and he missed, so he tackled the bard. And then we all fell down the flight of steps again. Like we all fell back down the steps. So I was like,
I really need to. I've been saying this for work, but it also applies for gaming. I really need to have the Benny Hill music on my phone.
Yeah.
The Yakety Sax. That's the official name. That's the actual official name. Yes. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it was so what we did is I told her, I was like, okay, we can go back to this campaign again, but I need like a tutorial campaign. Like I need to know how this game works because we spent 4 hours just walking and talking to NPCs until shit finally happened, and then I died. So I
don't know. Sounds like you get a tutorial campaign to me.
Yeah, I was like, so I need something to explain this freaking game. So there was that. So we also I've been trying to play Star Trek Attack Wing, and Star Trek Attack Wing is interesting. It's like the X-Wing game. If you're familiar with it, it's a tabletop miniatures game.
Right.
And they use this kind of system. But I felt so bad. So yesterday we were at the game store, and I put all the information. So instead of like using booklets the way like Warhammer does, where all the information's in a book, each
cards.
It's cards in a pack. So you buy the ship, and the ship has all the cards. So what I did is got a 3-ring binder and put all the cards in the
That's
book.
smart.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I left the 3-ring binder at the house. So we were not
Oh.
playing Star Trek. So we played another board game, space combat board game called Talon. And we played about 3 rounds of that. And it's not a simple game, but it is a lot of fun. It's a space combat, hex-based board game that's a lot of fun. But you have to, like, manage your ships, and it's really tough because, like, the chips turn really wide, so you're really going to only make, like, one pass, and then you got to, like, re-maneuver the ship and slow her down so you can tighten up your turns but charge your weapons. And then when you pass, you want to charge your weapons back up and fire and then change your power curve. It's really interesting. And
That's really complex. I'm not sure I would like that.
It's complex. Yeah, it's definitely complex. It's not simple, but it's super, super interesting. It's difficult with, like, one ship, but we did it with, like, 2, and I blew up one of Baruch's ships on the first pass, and then used my other 2 to kind of pincer him. So one ship went one way, one ship went the other. So no matter which way he went, he was going to get stuck in between 2 of them.
Right.
Poor
And it was just a
Baruch.
matter of angling the ship so I can get my forward arcs on them, and it was really, really neat. And then we play this game called Battle Lore, which I've talked about the Command and Colors system a lot every now and again. And Baruch and I had talked about, wouldn't it be fantastic if Command and Colors, you had like this the rule set from GMT, the guys who do all these really great war games, but with the production value of a Fantasy Flights, because Fantasy Flights puts out all these really impressive games. You know, they're the ones who produce X-Wing, they're the ones who produce
Right.
Armada. They do the Star Trek, Star Wars Rebellion, which is this giant. Their games are getting to the point where they're not like board game boxes; they're shipping crates. They're getting so freaking big.
Yeah.
Because they're doing 40K. They've got Forbidden Stars for 40K. They've got a Horus Heresy board game, and they're all freaking huge, right? And they're huge, and they've got miniatures, and they've got dozens of counters and a number of cards, but the production value is super beautiful. I mean, it's really, really beautiful. Like, that's the one thing you can't take away from Fantasy Flights, is how good their shit looks. It just looks great. So Battle Lore was a game I had for about a month. We cracked it open, and it is exactly what we wanted, a GMT-style rule set with Fantasy Flight's production value. So it's so beautiful. It's actually really, really, really simple. And if you've played like a single game of Command and Colors, you'll understand how to play this game in 2 minutes.
Nice.
So we played it, and Baruch won the tutorial, but he was like, "Oh God, I need this game in my life. I need to have this game. This needs to be mine." The problem is the game is like $80-something.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's a Fantasy Flights game. It's going to be.
So do you
$80.
does the store then just like break out the games and let you guys play them there? Is that how you're playing these?
No, I own this. I own all the ones I just mentioned. Like, I buy them and
Okay.
own them. Partly because, like, with games that come directly from GMT, you gotta, like, own them. Because they don't make many units of them. And they disappear very quickly. Like, Talon came out the beginning of this year and was sold out beginning of this year. Like,
Yeah.
it was gone that quick. Like, I had to go on Amazon and hunt a couple copies down, and there were only a handful left. And the way GMT puts their games back out into the market is you have to vote to bring them back. So they have this system called P500, which is novel for a company like them that doesn't have like a big following the way Fantasy Flights does, for example,
Yeah.
where they say, here's all the games we're thinking of bringing back, and what you do is you order it, like you literally order it, but you don't pay until later. And so if enough people order the game, it hits 500 orders or 700 orders or whatever, then they print it and send it out.
I guess that makes sense if you're a small company because you don't want to be printing 1 or 2 here or there or a big run of something that's never going to sell, especially if it's expensive. And you want to hit like whatever the lot amount, that they had to purchase from the printer. And I just looked it up. So you called it Fantasy Flights. I looked it up. I thought that they were the ones that made that Game of Thrones game.
They've made a couple.
Yeah.
got
Well,
the
at
Game of
this
Thrones
point,
card
there's a
game.
couple.
The Game of Thrones, the living card game, which I would suggest no one play, and
I've never tried that. I tried a board game.
The Game of Thrones board game, which is not
that was
Risk.
really nice.
Yeah, that's also like really complex because you got to like.
Oh yeah, there's so much going on.
We tried it once, but that game only truly works if you have 6 players.
Oh really? Okay.
Yeah, we tried it with 4, and we all kind of got bogged down. Like it just we got stuck.
Yeah.
It was just we all got into a stalemate. No one could break out. And then if you play with 6, the game comes alive and it gets insane.
Yeah, it was so complex that our gaming group that one night, I think there were 5 or 6 of us, we barely made it through like reading the rules and getting the whole thing set up before it was like way late and we all had to go home. So we didn't actually get through it very much.
The thing you have to do with a game like that is have one person. Well, one, online, if you go on YouTube, they have like a 20-minute tutorial of how to play the game.
Oh, okay.
For Fantasy Flights. And then 2, you need someone who reads just through the rules and plays like one game by himself. This is the way I do it. If I've got games, because I get a lot of those really complex war games, I set the game up and I play it by myself.
Because you're a nerd.
I'm a nerd. And you just go step by step through the game, one at a time. Okay, here's how movement works, and you do the whole thing. And then you can play it with a friend.
Okay.
Because if you're trying to learn it together, you're not going to have fun. I'll guarantee you won't have fun. Because you'll just be trying to figure it out. And you're like, dude, what do I do? I don't know! Read it, and then you're reading and then you pull out a rule book that's like 45 pages long, and you're like, where is this? Yeah, and it just gets crazy. Other than that, I haven't really been reading much. I told you offline that I'm halfway through George Orwell's Road to Wigan Pier, and that's part of my bigger project. So I don't want to go too deeply into that because I don't want to give away my thesis yet. But I would suggest it. It's certainly interesting. It's not. I don't know if I would call it good because it's not a novel. It's not a story. It's him just documenting working class life in northern England in the 30s during the Depression. So if you want to know what that life looked like, then if you're really interested in what working class miners lived like in the north of England, particularly like I didn't know this that they had such a housing shortage at the time. There were people living in decommissioned buses. Almost like their version of trailer parks.
Damn.
These buses were like had the wheels taken off and were up on blocks, or some of them were not up on blocks. And since they weren't insulated,
I bet that got freaking cold.
Freezing, and then like their mattresses would get wet, and they would never dry out.
Ugh.
Like it's
and
really
mold. Gross.
Yeah, the mold and like how so many of the homes in England at the time didn't have bathrooms. They had outhouses. And how the apartments were set up, if you had a front apartment, if you had a back apartment, you could walk out the back of your apartment and walk into the yard where the outhouse was, because the outhouse was for like multiple homes.
Mm-hmm.
So it takes like 50 yards to walk to the outhouse. But if you lived in the front of the building, you had to exit the front of the building, walk around the block, and then go into the back. So you had to he talked about how it's like a 200-yard trip to go to the bathroom to use the outhouse. And
I'd be holding it a lot.
Yeah, that's what it looks like. And then how a lot of them didn't have, since they have bathrooms, they have public bathhouses. And like sometimes the public bathhouses, they didn't have enough of them. So you have all these miners who are covered in soot and mining dirt and sweat. That's where they cleaned themselves. They couldn't clean themselves at home because there's no bathroom. So
but then everybody else is like wallowing in their same gross water. Ugh, that sounds nasty.
Oh yeah, it is really something. He describes these elderly families that are living together, multi-generational homes in these small buildings. He goes through the size of the buildings, the size of the rooms. And how, like, the 95-year-old grandma is just sitting on a pot to piss in. Like, literally, that's what it is. Like, when people say you don't have a pot to piss in, at least these people had the pot. But it's not pleasant.
Right.
Wow.
But it's an interesting book. But it doesn't have any of his literary flair that we are used to from 1984 or Animal Farm because he's written it way before. This was, however, the first book that put him on the map. Road to Wigan Pier was a hit, a moderate hit, and allowed him to have enough money where he could finally get married. He'd been meaning to marry this woman for a couple of years, and he didn't have any money to do it. And
He'd been meaning to marry her for a couple of years.
Yeah. He proposed to marry her. Like I think her name was Eileen. He proposed to marry her, and he's like he didn't have the money, so he wrote Road to Wigan Pier, and then came back, and she said yes. That was that. And I mentioned Stranger Tales last podcast. I still want people to watch that. And
Stranger Things.
Sorry, I keep saying Tales. Stranger Things. That is so good, just for the music. The 1980s music alone is so good. And that's about it. I rewatched Venture Brothers for season 5. And South Park started this week. It was so awesome. Did anyone see that?
No.
You're the only one who I think really follows South Park of the three of
Oh
us.
my god, it was so good. You got J.J. Abrams to rewrite the national anthem. Because they needed him to reboot the national anthem. It was so good. And then it's like, they have these things called member berries, where they're just nostalgic berries that talk to you. And they're like, remember Star Wars? Yeah, I remember Star Wars. Remember Chewbacca? Yeah, Chewbacca. Remember Super Nintendo? Oh my god, And then like they sneak in like little things, like because they're little nefarious member berries. Remember when there weren't so many Mexicans? Yeah, I remember. They're like, wait, what? It's really good. It's really, really good. I don't know. I would recommend it. It's all on Hulu. You can see it for free.
Nice.
All right, I think that'll about wrap us up here. So, folks, if you like what we do, make sure you head on over to thereforeigeek.com. You can find our blog posts and our podcasts. You can find us on Facebook, on Instagram, and on Twitter. And you can find this podcast and other podcasts like it on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
So once again, I'm Andrew.
I'm Tracy.
I'm the dude.
And you've been listening to Therefore I Geek.